As is often the case, a lot of new developments in the Russia investigation. Special Counsel Bob Mueller's team, they could start interviewing past and present White House officials as early as the end of this week. CNN reporting that could include former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and former Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Also on the list, current White House counsel Don McGahn. Now, we also know the IRS's Criminal Investigation Unit is now sharing information with the aforementioned Mr. Mueller. Sources telling us that it includes information about former campaign manager Paul Manafort, as well as former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. By the way, Senator Richard Blumenthal, friend to the program from Connecticut, he just told Politico he's, quote, 99% sure Manafort and Flynn will face criminal charges against them. Now, the president has been pretty quiet lately about Russia and about Mueller, but if he starts going after the special prosecutor again, Congress, they say they're ready to protect him. Two bipartisan bills, they've been introduced, and they would safeguard the independent prosecutor if, in fact, the president would try and fire him. Plus, tech companies, they're now in the sights of investigators. Senate Intelligence Committee, they want to speak with Google execs about Russian meddling, especially planning fake news stories which were mostly anti-Hillary. Facebook and Twitter already speaking with that Senate panel. For more on this, let's bring in good friend to the program, Bill Aronwald, helping us sorting this out, defense attorney and former assistant U.S. attorney as well. And Bill, of all the developments I said, what do you think the most significant is in terms of advancing the ball here in this Russia probe?
Well, potentially two. One of which would be talking to those in the White House who obviously would be suspected or expected to know a lot more about what was going on within the White House. You know, when you talk about Priebus, you talk about Spicer. I mean, these were people basically who were at the president's knee, if you would.
And Spicer apparently was saying that he took copious notes throughout his term there.
Yeah. Now, the real question is, you know, whether or not there's going to be claiming any executive privilege with respect to their being interviewed. At this point, I think if the president felt that there was something to be afraid of or fearful of, I think he probably would be wise to assert executive privilege. The second point is that when the interesting thing is when you talk about the IRS cooperating with Mueller, you know, is it possible, for example, that they're cooperating with respect to providing Mueller with those tax returns that Trump filed, which Trump promised to provide, then changed his mind and has never furnished or disclosed? Because, you know, those tax returns really could be a smoking gun. They could basically provide very detailed information as to exactly what type of business dealings Trump had with Russia and when and with whom. Does he owe money to any Russian business? Did he borrow any money? The same thing with China. So it seems to me that if the IRS is really cooperating in any meaningful sense, it doesn't make any sense that Mueller would not also seek information concerning Trump's tax returns.
Now, in the course of an investigation, let's say, as has been reported, that Mueller's gotten his hands on the returns, let's say. When, if ever, does that become public, as a matter of public investigation, if there's an ongoing investigation?
Well, you know, there's grand jury secrecy, and so whatever goes on in a grand jury is never publicly disclosed unless at trial people who testify in the grand jury are called as witnesses at trial, where there's an indictment. And then the grand jury transcripts of their testimony must be disclosed to the defense for whatever use the defense lawyer may want to make of them. The same rules of secrecy, I think, would apply to Mueller's investigation as well, because as special counsel, if he's impaneling grand juries, and we're told he has, then traditional grand jury rules of secrecy would apply. The interesting thing here is, if you take a step back, you know, grand juries oftentimes are impaneled to conduct investigations, and at the end of the day, no matter how many witnesses and documents they examine, there just isn't enough to bring criminal charges. But there is enough to raise public concern as to whether there was impropriety or breaching of ethics rules. And so even if Mueller were to conclude at the end of his investigation that there's not enough to prosecute, he could still issue a report which would provide detailed information as to what, if any, things occurred on the part of Trump or anybody close to Trump, which could be questionable in terms of their judgment or skirting the line between criminal and non-criminal. So, you know, those are 2 points that I think bear further watching.
We've talked before, at the time it was Facebook, now we know it's Google, and probably not the only tech firms, search firms that'll be, when it's all said and done, involved in this. What could be, because I've heard some people say that's the most significant thing. If this can show, I guess, pattern, Bill, as well as also needed coordination. There's no way, as we said before, you know, 3 guys in St. Petersburg here who are hacking know that, you know, X, Y, and Z congressional districts in these battleground states are the target areas for Trump if he wants to win. I'll make this up, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, whatever else. Somebody had to say, because apparently it's systematic, these are the places we want to place these stories. That could be a big problem.
Well, it could be a big problem, but, you know, there has to be a connection.
Yep.
You know, it may very well be that Russia was planting all false information or hacking information and then putting it out there through Google or Yahoo or anybody else, Facebook. But unless there's a linkage between Trump and people in Trump's campaign and the Russians where they were conspiring together to do that, then if that's all they find is that the Russians were planning false information or were providing information that was hacked information, what does that mean in terms of the culpability of the president or anybody close to him? So let's say you can make a case against some Russian officials in St. Petersburg. You're never going to get them into this country to be prosecuted.
They don't have to worry about getting flipped or getting charged, more importantly. Obviously, we'll continue to follow this, but my friend, as always, I thank you for a few minutes.
Okay, pleasure.
Coming up next, everybody, we'll take a look at some local headlines, so please stay with us.